So, after that daring daylight robbery at the local diner, we now find ourselves at the top of Coughlin's Peak at the workers' lodgings, where if my suspicions are correct, I think we should be able to find the culprits. And in fact, along with Mel's motorcycle we saw back there, we also happen across this mysterious new person. And it just so happens that his garb is somewhat familiar, and he seems pretty surprised by seeing Matthew up here. Though Matthew doesn't seem to recognize what this guy is wearing. But yeah, the guy is also assuming that we have no earthly idea that he just tried to rob us at gunpoint, so he also tries to play a little dumb and tells us to scram. And a part of me is assuming that Matthew is just trying to lull him into a false sense of security, before we obviously inevitably do follow him. And that brings us into an exciting mini-game of forced stealth. Yeah, we are going to have to follow this guy to wherever he and, I'm assuming, Mel are hiding out in the workers' lodgings up here. And every so often he will turn around and make sure no one is following him, and we want to make sure to stay... Well, there's no exact science to this, just far enough away to where we can see him, and somehow he manages to not see us. And believe it or not, this is actually a really, really difficult part to get down right. The tank controls definitely do not help. The fact that there's no real indication about this guy's field of vision also does not help. And there's also just the fact that we are definitely still on a time schedule, so... fail this too many times and you are going to be way, way, way far behind to do other activities later on in the day. Good thing is, while I am taking a pretty roundabout way to follow him, trust me when I say this is probably the safest route to take, and inevitably it's not really that long of a stealth section. Because, yeah, he's already led us right to their hideout. And in fact, he's nice enough to very verbally out loud say the code to the door here. Yeah, it seems to be a simple, I guess, 4-digit combination of O's and, I think, triangles. And yeah, I do appreciate the fact that they've started to introduce some additional little mini activities amongst all the detective work that we're doing. And just like that, we find ourselves inside the pretty shabby looking worker lodgings here. And we do have a choice of 2 doors, though we actually just want to peep in through this door. And where we find not only Mel, but also his chrome dome friend, Bonehead. Yeah, as you can imagine, Bonehead is not super happy about the fact that the police are now involved in Mel's business. And there is obviously the concern that whatever illicit doings they were already getting up to are now just simply exacerbated by the fact that Mel, in his attempts to get some money to pay back Bonehead, has definitely drawn the eye of the local constables. If anything, Bonehead does want to reiterate the fact that, well, it's not only Bonehead that they have to worry about, it's whoever Bonehead's employer is, and definitely, it's a good idea not to rat out whoever this mysterious criminal kingpin is. If anything, though, I think Mel still wants to assure Bonehead that everything's on the up and up, and that everything will be handled, but yeah, there's already obviously the hitch in place of the fact that Matthew has stumbled across their lair. Now, as you might assume, this is not a great look for Matthew here. He's been cornered by 3 ruffians, and he's just kind of a local high school kid, even though he has some semi-competent detective work and has some pretty astute friends. I don't think this is going to be a situation he is going to be easily able to get out of. I think the only thing he really has on his side right now is the fact that there's obviously some infighting going on between the gang here. Mel's already not too happy about the robbery getting botched, and I'm sure he's blaming this blonde accomplice here that things didn't go their way, especially since just kind of drew out the robbery that this guy wanted to try to rob Matthew here for probably next to no money. Also, there is the fact that he indeed led us straight to their hideout. But Mel decides to give him one last opportunity to make things right. And that leads us into another brand new awkward little action set piece here, where we are going to have to fight against this blonde robber. Yeah, if you didn't expect it, this game does have a little bit of hand-to-hand combat to it, and as you can imagine, it does not handle very well. You have punches and kicks you can do. There's even a few special moves and combos. If you manage to connect, I think, with 3 hits in a row, you'll do that nice big roundhouse there. And the only real way to dodge attacks is to press down on the D-pad, and that's a little bit delayed, so yeah, believe it or not, I feel like I'm pretty competent at this fighting in the game, and even still, it does not always go very well. And I do promise this will not be the last time we will have to get into a fist fight with someone. The good thing is that there is a little Easter egg / mini game you can unlock if you did manage to talk to Old Man Perry. If you visit him later on, and I think pretty much any evening after the second day, you can enter into a weird 2-player fighting tournament where you can play as a number of other character models in the game and practice your fist fighting there, but thankfully I don't need to do that. Managed to scrape by there on just the sheer willpower I have. I'm assuming to still find Emma. Is that even though I did manage to win that fight fair and square, there is no honor amongst thieves here. And I think no matter what, they were not really planning on letting Matthew go out of this place alive. For the second time in Matthew's less than great day, he's already has another gun jammed into his face. He's pretty much facing certain death here. But unexpectedly, we get some actually useful help from the local police. Not sure how they managed to find us up here. We didn't really leave any clues for them, though that probably would have been the smartest thing to do. But that at least spooks Bonehead enough to where he is looking to get out of here before he gets arrested. And while he is turning tail, he's more than happy to abandon these underage hooligans that he's shacked up with. Yeah, I get the impression that Bonehead is full-on criminal, and Mel and whoever this other mystery fellow are, they're just kind of along for the ride, trying to, I guess, play at being robbers and real criminals. So, as Mel and his accomplice are escorted off by good old Deputy Hudson, we are now left only to wonder exactly how, I guess, Morgan and Hudson were able to find us in the first place. Matthew, too, is wondering on that point as well. Seems, though, that after we had that little bit of a discussion with Lorraine, she, too, was pretty much open to the fact that she should probably contact the police and get this whole issue with Mel sorted out before things just escalated more and more. And yeah, much like with the bear hunt, or pretty much anything we've done so far with our investigation, Morgan yet again tries to reaffirm the fact that we should not be meddling in super dangerous affairs. But he tries not to scold us too badly. I mean, we have almost, like I mentioned, we have almost been killed twice today. Yeah, Mel and his accomplice are going to be escorted back down to the sheriff's station to get a little bit of interrogation out of the way. Sadly, it seems that their ringleader, old Bonehead, is nowhere to be seen. He managed to get through, I'm assuming, their very in-depth net/APBs that they probably did not have out for him. Which is a bit of a shame, because he seems to be the most knowledgeable one amongst the group here. I figure if anybody can tell us anything about what's going on with this criminal organization in town, it'd probably be Bonehead. To make matters worse, not only have we lost the diner's money, but we've also lost what little bit of money we had. It seems that Bonehead ran off with that when he scampered off. Good thing is, it's not really going to hamper us any with purchasing gas or food throughout the story. Just, I don't know, bit of a bummer that Bonehead managed to get away. And I guess I really shouldn't be shitting too much on Morgan here. He did save our lives here. But yeah, overall, I do find it interesting that there were some hints earlier on that there was a specific reason why Dennis and Mel didn't really want to do any upkeep on the lodgings up here, and it's more, I think, Mel's part, because he just wanted this little hideaway where his criminal activities could be done in secret without, any Aston farm workers coming up here. More importantly, though, there is still the question of Emma's missing diary. And I assume if there be any place it would be in Mel's little hidden lair up here, but yeah, it was not in the workers' lodgings, and the Morgan still has no idea where it could be. But I do have a other definite idea about where it could be, considering that at this point, still very certain that it was Mel and his hockey mask that took it out of the Roland residence. And since it's not up here at his hidden lair, it probably is more than likely back down at his home. So, after managing to thwart the robbers just a little bit before lunchtime, it's time to make our way all the way across town over to the Aston residence. Yep, we can now still safely get inside Mel's room without any worry about him barging in. We do find Emma's diary. Now, obviously, it is very rude to invade anybody's, private thoughts and feelings. But in this case, we definitely need to do it to try to get some further clues about what exactly happened with Emma. And while Matthew is a very good person that just wants to go hand off this information directly to Morgan, I'm a bit more of the mindset that we need to figure out some stuff for ourselves. So, let's go ahead and take a look at that diary. Now, while I'm sure Emma was keeping a diary for probably years, we're only going to be looking at the last couple of days leading up to her disappearance. So by looking in on the 21st, we are mostly going to just reiterate some stuff we already kind of knew about. Mostly that, well, I guess Emma was feeling a little bit disillusioned and distanced from, her friends, her homeroom teacher, anybody that I think felt a connection with her and probably knew her on a day-to-day basis, but didn't really know that deep down inside she was suffering a lot. Yeah, even though we pictured her as being a fragile beauty that was always all smiles, deep down there was just a well of pain and suffering and an overall existential crisis going on that she just really did not feel comfortable with revealing to anybody, except for I think a couple people. And yeah, we did learn some of this from Dr. James. I guess there is that, reaffirmation that it wasn't just Dr. James trying to blow smoke up our ass. It does kind of suck, though, that, Matthew here is figuring out that maybe he really didn't know Emma as well as he thought. Moving on to the next day. Getting closer and closer to that sad, sad Christmas Eve. Here we get a little bit of reaffirmation that, Emma did have some contact with Isabella. I mean, we already know that Emma did enjoy Isabella's song Eternal. She did have it on that little diskette that she would play back to herself. It seems that while she was frequenting Bar Wolf and stabbing people with forks, she also took in the sad songs that Isabella had to sing, and the fact that Isabella was, I guess, in some type of danger. It mentions that she's being controlled by some mysterious figure. Whether this could be connected to that mysterious figure that was also controlling Bonehead and Mel and, I guess, the criminal underworld here in town, it's a bit hard to tell, but definitely makes me feel like we should follow up a bit more with Isabella and see what she might know about Emma. Which works out for us, because we were planning on heading and seeing her sing tonight either way. And I mean, outside of it being a good deed, I'm sure helping out these people will obviously give us more and more information to figure out Emma. Well, we just have one final entry in the diary, the day before Christmas Eve and Emma's disappearance. And it's with this entry that we finally find the most important information and kind of an indication about why Mel wanted to take away the diary. Yeah, all the previous entries were just about Emma's feelings and thoughts, but this seems to instigate Mel, Emma, and Kathy together in some kind of illicit activity. Activity that Emma didn't really want to seem to be a part of, but Kathy seemed to say was pretty much necessary to reach some level of understanding. It's a bit vague. But yeah, we do finally get the connection between Emma and Kathy here. And there is something that they were doing with Mel at 9 p.m. on the 23rd, which, well, the diary really didn't go too in-depth about, but it does remind me that we did manage to find another hidden away note here inside of Mel's room that I think mentioned 9 p.m. So if we open up our fanny pack with our dwindling assortment of items, that's right. there was that note reminding Mel to go to the motel at 9 p.m. And yeah, the assumption is that Mel, Emma, and Kathy, the day before, Kathy's death and Emma's disappearance, all met up at this mysterious motel room to do something. Definitely just another clue to follow up on. Just had to hope that they didn't use some impressive pseudonym to throw off anybody trying to follow their trail. For now, though, with all that new information out of the way, I think it's time to go ahead and fill in Morgan on what we figured out. Yet again, crossing our fingers that we hope he doesn't mind the fact that we kind of broke and entered to the Aston residence to get that diary, especially after he did just tell us to back up off the case here. And I'm the burglar that broke into Mel's room twice. Still, I mean, I would feel angry at Matthew if I was a local sheriff. He's been breaking a couple laws here. Not to mention the fact I think he's been driving around town at about 60 miles an hour all the time, kind of hitting people. But, I mean, Matthew is filling in Morgan on some very useful, pivotal information to the investigation. Especially the fact that there is a very, very obvious connection now between Mel, Kathy, and Emma. So Mel must know something about Emma's whereabouts. And while it seems initially that Morgan might be commenting on the crazy state of the youth, with Mel being that example of, youth gone bad, no, he's actually talking about us, not really heeding his warnings and backing off like he asked. All in all, though, he's telling us not to get involved for clear-cut reasons. An untrained kid very well could just completely ruin the investigation, and obviously there's a lot of danger going on here. The problem is Morgan instead tries to approach it as it's more his mistake that he didn't allow Matthew direct involvement and just try to keep him at arm's length. And yeah, he just kind of gives in and says, well, there's nothing I can do to stop you from doing dumb shit. So, join our investigation. Which is great for us. I mean, that gives us hopefully more leverage around town whenever we have to question and interrogate people with Matthew's imposing varsity jacket. Also, a little bit of joke here from Morgan saying that in return for allowing us to help on the investigation, we had to join the police force after. But yeah, he's just making a little joke. Keeping a little levity with the missing girl. Also, since he is now willing to fully involve us in the investigation, there is a whiteboard in the conference room where we can get some updated information over the course of the game to go along with our notebook. But we won't be using that just yet. I think we still have a relatively good grasp on everything going on right now. It definitely will be something we'll be kind of needing to use for later, though. Also, for doing such a good job as junior detectives, he does give us another very helpful item. Yep, it is an old sheriff's badge. Now, this isn't to say that we are deputized by any measure. And while I think Morgan tries to give the impression this is mostly just a gesture of goodwill, there will be a very specific reason we want to make sure and have this old sheriff's badge on us later on. So, pretty happy. We've been doing a pretty good job today. Thwarted a robbery, become junior detectives. And a part of me thought I needed to get a little bit more discussion out of the diary with Morgan on this, but it was just more my mistake. It is sometimes a bit hard to gauge whether or not I've missed something important in a piece of discussion. Also, we are not entirely done at the sheriff's station just yet. But to get the next thing to trigger, we do have to exit and re-enter the sheriff's station. Because by doing that, we managed to run into the father leaving the sheriff's station. And yeah, now that Mel is incarcerated, the father here was hoping to get some bit of confession and remorse out of Mel for his nefarious deeds. Sadly, Mel, as we've kind of already figured out, is not really big on the concession part, so yeah, no real confessions or remorse out of him. And sadly, going to the father here to get a real good sermon, I suppose, regarding today's youth and their moral compasses. We already know, especially after the funeral, his feelings on that are a little bit askewed. As we already kind of know, he and Kathy's relationship was strained to say the least, and yeah, he's just got some weird, questionable views. They go outside of the realm of normal Judeo-Christian original sin or whatever. He seems more of the thought process that sin is just still very prevalent, and if you were ever tempted by sin, you have no recourse about getting out of that. Good thing for us, I guess, is that he still sees Matthew here as an innocent bystander. Though I don't know, I don't really have any reason to feel super threatened by the father yet. Just kind of a religious eccentric, I suppose, in town. But you know, after Mel had that heart-to-heart with the father there, I'm sure he's more than happy to have us pay him a visit, so we're going to go ahead and head down to the new area of the sheriff's station here, the holding cells. Because, I mean, after we read the diary, we definitely want to try to find out more about what his, Emma, and Kathy's interactions were that night. But, as you can assume, totally not up for discussing that. And to make matters worse, instead of trying to talk about that, Matthew tries to rub salt in the wounds and go about the task of guilting Mel. Seems though that Mel definitely does not have a high opinion of the old father there and calls him a dirty old masturbator. Because he feels that there's some information he knows about the father that makes the father look a little bit hypocritical. And one of those pieces of information is actually kind of something we already knew about, though before we get into that, there's still this idea that, you know, this isn't divine retribution for Mel. Instead, it's just Matthew and his meddling ways. Not to sound too much like a Scooby-Doo episode. Yeah, Mel mentions here that Father Barton does happen to hang out late at night outside of Bar Wolf to, I guess, do some soapbox sermons to people. Now, we did already kind of know that. We've had a few discussions here and there with him. But it seems that and some other activities are kind of indicative of why Kathy quote-unquote went off the rails here. Seems that she might have imbued some additional information on Mel here after they were doing whatever in that motel room. The problem is that, just kind of a brick wall for right now. Mel's not going to be willing to talk to us anymore. And I think Matthew should kind of count his blessings that Mel called him just a do-gooder, not, a little wanker or something. Still, definitely a lot of useful information, and we've now just barely cracked into the afternoon of this third day. So we have a lot of other things to catch up on later on in the afternoon. Probably swing by that motel room and see what's up. But for right now, I think this is a good stopping point as any, so hopefully you will join me as we head on to the later parts of the afternoon of day 3 and see where the investigation takes us. See you then.